Hey, welcome back to Power of the Programmer. This is section 4.5. We're going to be covering organizing our data in this section. By now we should have gone over the big picture, followed by what are CSVs, and then reading a CSV into our program. So in this section, we're going to be organizing our data into something usable for processing. If we reference back to the picture from the big picture section, we learned that everything up to now has been cleaning. So this is the final step of cleaning, and we're going to be ready to start doing our analysis, which is the real power of Python and our job as business analysts and small business owners as well as entrepreneurs. So let's go ahead and open up our file. If you're following along, this is section 4, sales.py. So this is a pre-configured list. I have everything typed out. So let's comment this out. We have our file read already. So in this case, we will be using the CSV library. So a library, in the formal definition, is a pre-packaged collection of functions and methods that let you perform many actions without writing a code. A real life example of this is, for example, you want to get a burger but you don't have the supplies. Restaurants are you can go to a restaurant and buy a burger and it's already ready. So that is a very similar thing as a library in Python. Somebody else already created it for you. You just have to take it and import it. It's like buying a pre-made burger instead of using the ground beef to make your own burger. Pythons can be dragged in and dropped into your program, and they are like off-the-shelf versions of code. It's because you never should reinvent the wheel if somebody else already did it better than you, because writing it yourself always could lead to errors, and if somebody else wrote it well, then there's no reason to rewrite it. The time and the energy to get it just as perfect is not worth the time that you would have lost not doing that. I use libraries in my programs all the time. They speed up development, make sure I get the job done, especially since I am not a developer. So my job is more on the analysis side rather than the development side, which that might make more sense to modify your own libraries to fit your own use case. So in this case, we're going to be using the CSV library. So we can go ahead and import it just by typing import CSV. And the import keyword basically means bring this library in. It's a standard keyword in Python. And here, once we have it in, we will have our CSVs ready. So let's go ahead and start from scratch. So we can see here we have our main program, and from the previous section we want to read this file. So it's open sales data.csv, read as f. Let's go ahead and declare a CSV reader variable. So CSV reader is equal to csv.reader f. So what this function does, if we see it over here, is actually read the CSV. The documentation sort of indicates that, and we're missing a delimiter, which basically means what separates these data columns. And the CSV is comma separated list, so it's a comma. So now we have our CSV reader ready. We can actually test that in Python and run this little program to see what it looks like. So run python.sales.py, and we can see our CSV readers created. So now that we have our CSV reader, remember the first column is always a section header. So we don't necessarily want that in our program. So let's go ahead and skip the first section. So there's a lot of ways to do this. One way I like to do it is set count to 0, and then for every row inside our CSV reader, which basically is a for in loop with iterating over the rows. We ignore the count if it's 0. So use a conditional. We increase count by 1. And then continue through our function. So what this block of code just basically does is skips the section header, so we can skip to the data in our spreadsheet. So as you can see here, I'm going to open another file for the data, and we can see we have around 23 rows. Not all of them are labeled, so there's many ways of doing this. Personally, I believe the easiest way is using a bunch of arrays. Of course, you can also use dictionaries and dictionaries of arrays, arrays of dictionaries. It's really up to you. I'm gonna go and fast forward and type in all these columns. So order ID is the first one, list, purchase date, and this is very repetitive. So I'm going to fast forward through this and show you the final product. So there we go. We see that we have 23 arrays created. So now we need to go ahead and start loading this with the proper data. So we can go ahead and just copy this and then set the appropriate values using the append keyword, remember, from the list sections. So all of these are in order. So row 0 would indicate a row is an array. So row 0 would be the order number, row 1 would be the purchase date, row 2 would be the last update date, so on and so forth. Remember, computers start counting from 0, so we need to start with row 0. So this is also very repetitive, so I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through this section. Great, so now we have all of our rows added. The little trick I did earlier was, it's called the Command D trick. Basically, if you highlight something, you press Command D, it selects the next row that matches that text. So append, it matches append. It's like defined in Excel. So if you wanted to look for 1001, it would find that and keep on going until the next one. But the cool thing is if you have a bunch of them selected, you can edit a bunch of them at once. And it's a neat little trick to speed up your workflow. So now that we have all of these arrays loaded, we can go ahead and print out the information that we're looking for. So for example, this of course matters data set to data set, organization to organization, but for example, I care about the date of order. I also care about the channel shifted to, and also the state. For example, let's say I'm looking for which channels, which states buy the most from me, from my store. So I want to focus more on advertising in those states for the respective channels. So my hunch might be, I think Etsy sells a lot in California, so I should reaffirm that hunch. So let's run this, and I have these dates selected, these files selected. So now you can see that all of our information is separated. So now I can start performing data processing on this. And now that I have this this information organized, it makes it really easy to start running through it, because having the raw data is good to have, but is not very usable by a program, because programs are very precise. They take a very precise set of instructions. So throwing a program a big list of CFVs is like giving a new employee a stack of papers. He won't know, she won't know what to do with them. The same way a computer program, if given a stack of unprocessed data, unordered data, it won't know what to do with it, and it will be lost. So organization is key, using those data structures that we had before, the list and the dictionary, to organize our data properly for processing. And this is a very important thing to stress. There's no right way to do this. There's a lot of ways you organize your data, but it's really depending on how you think and how your team thinks as a collective. If it might make sense to just follow the same pattern that people have gotten used to and teams have gotten used to. It speeds up workflow and makes sure everything runs smoothly. So, for example, another way of doing this would have been like maybe a dictionary where you could like have the order ID as a key, and then you could have the date as a key, and then make an array of this. So that's another way of organizing the data. That's essentially what a CSV really is. It's just it's an array of dictionaries. Another way you could have done this is maybe like grouping certain things like the prices and just grouping the SKUs and the products. Another way you could have done this is you could have thrown out a couple rows that don't have anything filled. You could have grouped it based on product. For example, if you did like maybe like product 1 would have its own array of orders, product 2 as well, etc., etc. So this is really, there's no right way to do this. It really depends on your organization and what you guys think makes the most sense. But breaking it up into individual rows is probably the easiest way of explaining it. So now that we have our data separated, we can go ahead and start processing in the next section.